I know macarons have a reputation for being difficult, but let me show you why they're not nearly as scary as people think. Come make some Italian macarons with me. My name is Key. I'm a Louisiana cottage baker and most recently a stay at home mom. But before we get started, I do want to give a disclaimer. I don't consider myself an expert when it comes to making macarons. I actually started making them back in 2024. And at that time, I was going through a pretty difficult season in my life. And honestly, I was just looking for something new to occupy my time. So I decided to start making macarons. And I did eventually add them to my menu for my baking business. Everything I know about macarons, I've learned through era YouTube videos, lots of practice and patience. And funny enough, before I started making macarons myself, I actually didn't even like macarons, and I think I maybe tried them once or twice, and I wasn't too impressed. But I love my macarons, and I may be a little biased, but I do think they are delicious. So fast forward to today, macarons aren't really a staple item on my menu anymore, but every now and then I do let them make an appearance because I do have several customers who absolutely love them. So today I wanted to make some macarons because I was also wanting to try out a brand new filling. Now, spoiler alert, I was not crazy about the filling, but the shells did turn out really great anyway. So let's get into it. First things first, I like to prep everything. I really do mean everything. I get out a bowl for my powdered sugar and almond flour, a bowl for my granulated sugar, one for my water, and two bowls for my egg whites. Now, you'll hear me say this several times throughout the video because macarons aren't hard, but they are finicky, and little things really do matter. So I try to eliminate as many variables as possible. I'm going to grab some vinegar and paper towels, and I'm going to wipe everything down. Now, you can use lemon juice if you prefer. With that vinegar, I'm going to wipe down my bowls, my spatulas, my stand mixer attachments, basically anything that could touch these macarons. The purpose is to remove any oils or grease because even a little bit can affect your results. And I do probably go a little overboard here, but it has always worked for me. Another thing that you are definitely going to need is going to be a kitchen scale. I got mine from Walmart, but I've seen some at Michael's and Hobby Lobby's. Hobby Lobby, when it comes to macarons, measuring by grams is pretty much a non negotiable. Now, there are several different methods for making macarons. You've got the French method, the Italian method, and the Swiss method. But honestly, ingredient wise, most recipes are very similar. The difference really comes down to the method you choose, what works best for you. I've tried the French method before, and personally, I just had better luck with the Italian method. As far as the Swiss method, I'm honestly not too familiar with it because I've never used it. So I start by weighing out my powdered sugar and almond flour. I place the bowl on the scale, zero it out, add my powdered sugar, zero out it again, then add my almond flour. Then I switch bowls and weigh out my granulated sugar and then in another bowl, my water. Now, let's talk about egg whites because I know that some people may have a different opinion about this, but for the paste portion of my macarons, I use carton egg whites. And it's something that I already keep on hand because I use them for my royal icing. They work really well for me. Now, for the egg whites that are going to go into my stand mixer, I use actual egg whites from an egg. Once everything is weighed out, we can move over to the stove because with the Italian method, we are going to make a sugar syrup. You definitely need a thermometer for this. I got mine from Walmart and I clip it onto the side of my pot. I just make sure that the tip isn't touching the bottom of the pot because that can throw off your readings. I add my sugar and water and I give it one quick stir just to combine everything. And after that, I do not touch it again. It is tempting, but just leave it alone. We are aiming for 244 degrees Fahrenheit. While that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and make my paste. So first I need to sift together my powdered sugar and almond flour because I don't want any lumps in my shells. You can use a food processor if you like, but I just usually use my sifter. Then I add my carton egg whites and start mixing. And it may look like in the beginning that it's not enough liquid, but at this stage, do not add more. I promise you it is enough liquid. At first, it's going to look dry and crumbly, but if you just keep pressing and mixing, it'll come together into a paste. Once your sugar syrup reaches 235 degrees, that's when I'm going to start to whip my egg whites in my stand mixer. I use the whisk attachment for this and whip it on high. Once they become frothy, I'm going to add a fourth teaspoon cream of tartar. At this point, you are kind of watching two things at once because you're watching your stand mixer and you're watching your pot. When your syrup is going to reach 244 degrees, your egg whites should resemble a white icing. That's how I like to describe it. And I'm going to take my sugar syrup and I'm slowly going to pour the syrup down the side of the bowl. Please do not pour it directly into the whisk. Be very careful because this can burn you. At this point, I also like to add my vanilla extract or your extract of choice at this stage. Something that I learned from YouTube years ago was to feel the outside of the bowl. If the bowl is still really hot, then it is not ready for you to check to see if it has reached stiff peaks. Once it's warm instead of hot, then you can start checking for your stiff peaks. People often say with the Italian method, you only need soft peaks, but personally, I just go all the way with stiff peaks. It has worked fine for me. Next, we are going to move into what's called the macaronage stage. And this one is probably the part that confuses most people. It honestly confuses me when I started. Practice does make perfect here. Most people will tell you about the ribbon or the lava consistency or making figure eights. Personally, I like to do judge it by two methods. So I'll look to see how it's flowing off of my spatula. If it's flowing like a ribbon, then it's ready. Or another technique I like to use is to look and see how well it is dissolving back into itself. How well is the macaron batter dissolving back into itself? If it dissolves within 10 to 12 seconds, usually I'm good to go. Also, another thing to remember is that it's better to under macaronage than over macaronage because once you over mix the batter, there really is no way to fixing it. After I'm done macaronaging, I will then add my gel food coloring. Now you can add this before this step. You can add it when you're doing your sugar syrup on the stove. You can add it when you're mixing in the stand mixer. But for me, because I'm doing a marbled effect, I'm going to add a few drops of each color and then swirl them around with a toothpick. Then I'm going to transfer everything to my piping bag. Personally, I like to use the Wilton bags because I feel like they give more structure, and I use the round tip, either a 10 or a 12 round tip. One thing I've learned with piping onto your macaron mat is to slow down. When I first started, for some reason, I rushed through and would often get mismatched shells, but you need to remember that the batter will spread. So I stop once it reaches the first circle on the mat. And now that we're speaking of mats, like using the silicone macaron mats from Michaels. You can probably get them at any location such as Amazon, maybe even Temu, TikTok Shop. But I like the ones from Michaels. I also found that I get better results with my macarons when I bake them on an upside down cookie sheet instead of inside the pan because of the rims or the edges of the pan. Technically, with the Italian method, you do not have to let them rest, but macarons have a way of humbling you. So I let mine rest anyway. Usually 30 to 40 minutes is enough. Or you can check it by touching the tops of your macaron shells. If you do not have any batter that sticks to your finger, then it's ready to go. If you are planning to add any toppings or sprinkles, make sure you do this before it dries because once that skin forms, nothing will stick to the top. For baking, I like to set my oven to 290 degrees and bake them for 17 minutes. And this is where I'm going to recommend that you have an oven thermometer for macarons because I learned pretty quickly that ovens often do not give accurate temperatures. So my oven runs about 10 degrees hotter than what it says. And with macarons, that really does matter. After baking them, you need to let them cool before trying to remove them from the mat. If they stick, don't panic. Sometimes they just need more time to cool, or they could be slightly underbaked. And if anything else, if all else fails, put the whole tray in the freezer for a few minutes and they'll release much easier. Once the shell cools completely, then it's time for filling. Something I want you to keep in mind when making macarons is I don't want you to chase the perfect macaron. Me personally, I focus more on taste than the look of them because honestly, I've had macarons that were oval shaped. They didn't have any feet or they stuck to the mat, they were concave. But something to keep in mind is that ugly macaron shells still taste good. People will still eat them and will still love them. So don't chase perfection, chase taste. So if you've been wanting to try macarons, I hope this video encourages you to just go for it. Thanks so much for hanging out with me while I made Italian macarons, and I hope to see you in the next video. If you've made macarons before, let me know that too. I'd love to know who's trying them for the first time. If you're a seasoned macaron baker, tell me in the comments which method do you use. Are you a French, Italian, or Swiss method macaron baker? Let me know below. Thanks so much for watching. Bye bye.